So this is the brand new Galaxy Z Fold 7, and I'm putting it up against the Z Fold 6 because honestly, this isn't just another incremental update. This is the biggest leap we've seen in the Fold lineup since its inception, and context is everything. But before I dive deep, I gotta address the elephant in the room. Samsung, the pioneers of this foldable design, has almost caught up to the competition. And by almost caught up, I mean that Chinese manufacturers like Oppo and Honor have had this thinner design for years, and in some cases, their designs are still slightly superior. It makes you wonder why it took Samsung this long to get here. But look, this is a truly beautiful foldable, but there is one downside, at least right off the bat, in that it's $100 more expensive than the previous model when it was first announced last year. But don't worry, Samsung is notorious for frequent discounts and aggressive trade-in deals that generally you can take advantage of. Now I want to start off with the design because this is where the Z Fold 7 truly shines. This thing is a whopping 26% thinner than the Z Fold 6 when folded. It's even lighter than the S25 Ultra, 12 grams lighter than the iPhone 16 Pro Max, and a hair lighter than the upcoming Honor Magic V5. When closed, its thinness almost rivals the Galaxy S25 Ultra. It's even thinner than something like the Nothing Phone 3 that was just announced not too long ago. Now, if you've always wanted a foldable but hated the idea of carrying around a bulky remote or something heavy, this phone solves that problem. It generally feels like a normal phone when it's in your pocket. But of course, some sacrifices had to be made. A lot of you out there are pretty upset about Samsung dropping stylus support. Personally, I couldn't care less. I don't use a stylus. It's just not for me. And honestly, it seems like it's a vocal minority who really want the stylus on the Fold. Either way, I think two possibilities here. Either Samsung saw the usage statistics for the stylus were too low to justify keeping it, or they prioritized achieving this incredibly thin design and need to remove the digitizer. You know what? I'm gonna add a third reason. Third reason, maybe they'll bring it back in a future model when they can get the proper technology to be supported in a device this thin. Now, the camera bump is noticeably larger than on the Z Fold 6, and that's because it houses a bigger 200 megapixel wide lens. This means a tiny bit more wobble if you tap the display when it's on a flat surface. However, I found this to be a non-issue in my daily use, as I'm usually holding the phone or I'm swiping lightly when it's on the table, okay? When it comes to opening the phone, the Z Fold 6 is actually a tiny bit easier to unfold because it's a thicker device. The Z Fold 7 being so much thinner can feel a bit more precarious to open. You have to be precise. And I've had moments where I'm like, uh-oh, am I gonna drop this? Is it gonna slip out of my hand? So maybe putting a case on it will help, but eventually you will get used to it. But the biggest improvement for me, besides the thinness, is that front display. I was never a fan of the remote or skinny display on previous Z Folds. It was a major reason why I could never truly main a Samsung foldable. For me, a proper front display is essential because that's the one I'm using most of the time. I'm sending quick texts, changing music, quickly setting a file, all those quick tasks, and typing on such a skinny screen made me have too many errors when I was typing. I'm not opening my phone to use the big display all the time. Some people think that's the way you should use it, but based on what I've seen, the bigger display on the inside is actually used a lot less. The inner display is mostly for reading a book or relaxing on the couch, multitasking, or watching video content. And because we finally have a proper 21:9 aspect ratio, at least on the front, it truly feels like a normal screen. The front camera is the same at 10 megapixels and it takes good selfies. However, I do think the processing is better, as I do find I have more color in my skin compared to the Z Fold 6. All right, so now you're looking at the front-facing camera on the Z Fold 7 and the Z Fold 6. Yeah, you guys let me know how it looks. The bigger screen on the Z Fold 7 is definitely handy. That's my daughter doing weird stuff. But either way, yeah, let me know how the microphones sound. Durability has also seen some improvements. We now have Gorilla Glass Ceramic 2 on the cover display and Gorilla Glass Victus 2 on the back. I know the Z Fold 6 does use Victus 2 as well, but we also have an advanced armor aluminum construction. Now this should provide enhanced durability compared to the previous model, though not by a huge margin. Both still feature IPX48 water resistance. Now this means you can immerse it in water, hopefully without any issues, which is great considering how thin it is. But please don't try to actively immerse it in water. I mean, it's good to know that it's there, but I mean, you don't want to do it intentionally because if it does break, you're probably not gonna have it fixed under warranty. But it's still not completely dust resistant. It can handle dust particles larger than 1 millimeter, but anything smaller could potentially get into the hinge and cause problems later. Call quality on this phone has been fantastic. Nobody had any issues hearing me, and I had no problems hearing them. Now, because this phone is thinner, it definitely still has two speakers, obviously, but generally the thinner a phone is, I usually find the sound quality goes down with it. So Here's a little sound comparison compared to the Z Fold 6, and you guys let me know which one sounds better. But once you open it up and see that larger inner display, it's just a wow moment. Like, this is what I love about foldables, you know? Like, you have a tablet that's in your pocket whenever you want. And the good news this year is they've increased the inner display size from 7.6 inches to 8. And yes, the crease is still visible, but less visible. They're using a 50% thicker version of the ultra thin glass, which means the crease isn't as deep as on the Z Fold 6, but yes, you're definitely going to see it. Both the inner and outer displays are 120 Hz adaptive refresh rate, and everything looks absolutely stunning. And because the inner display is 8 inches, you get to see more of the video you're watching. But my only real gripe is that I wish Samsung had taken their own advice and used the anti-reflective coating from the Galaxy S25 Ultra on the inner display. I think that would make a huge difference when it comes to consuming content. In certain lighting environments, light just bounces off and reflects quite a bit. Competitors like OnePlus with their OnePlus Open from years ago had anti-reflective properties, and it makes looking at the bigger inner display much more enjoyable. Now, we do have another point of contention for some users. The inner camera, it's no longer a 4 megapixel under the display camera. It's now 10 megapixels, has a cutout for it, and video quality looks so much better. Now, based on the feedback I've gotten from previous short videos, I'm getting two reactions. Some of you like the better camera and prefer it, while others question the point, given the superior rear cameras and even the front-facing camera. But for those of you who use the inner display for Zoom calls, having normal, proper quality makes a lot of sense. Yes, it's compressed, but it still looks better. Like, imagine if you're having a job interview. You want to look as best as possible, because a lot of people using that inner display are also multitasking at the exact same time. But then there are the others who dislike the camera's position, saying it doesn't look right not being directly in the top right corner. Yes, from a symmetrical OCD standpoint, I agree with you, but my take is I'd rather have it closer to the middle so you appear centered when talking to someone, unlike the old iPads where you're always off to the side. Now, there is one area where Chinese smartphone manufacturers are still well ahead of Samsung, and it comes down to battery life. Like, the Z Fold 7 is still using a regular lithium battery, not the silicon battery technology found in other foldables. Like, those foldables have batteries that go all the way up to 6,000 milliamp hours. And this is a problem, as this one here in the Z Fold 7 is only 4,400, identical to the Z Fold 6. Like, yes, you will get an extra 30 minutes of battery life thanks to the more efficient Snapdragon 8 Elite processor, but if you're a heavy user, you're gonna have days where you'll definitely need to top up. Unfortunately, there are no updates to fast charging. It's the exact same speeds as the Z Fold 6. But we do have some good news though. The Android 16 brings a lot of new features for foldables, like more precise app layout control, where you can have one app use 10% of the screen and another use 90. This offers a lot more granularity and feels more like a desktop environment. Also, dynamic display change handling, going from the outside to inside display, is handled so much better on the Z Fold 7. However, I suspect these features will eventually come to the Z Fold 6 and other Android foldables when they receive Android 16. All the Google, Gemini, and Samsung AI features are built into the Z Fold 6. I had to remind myself how incredible the object remover is. I had a picture with a ton of people in the background. Like, I didn't think anything could fix this, and I was able to remove everyone completely flawlessly. If I try that on an iPhone, it would be an absolute disaster. The fingerprint scanner is still on the right-hand side and works very, very well. But we gotta talk about performance, because the Snapdragon 8 Elite in the Z Fold 7 doesn't quite perform the same as the one in the Galaxy S25 Ultra. It's technically the exact same chip. And look, for normal everyday tasks, you really won't notice a difference between both devices. The only time you will see a slowdown is when you're gaming. Like, the Z Fold 7 throttles faster than the S25 Ultra. So if you're gaming for over 20 minutes, you'll experience quicker throttling. I also found the phone to heat up faster than the S25 devices. We've had heat waves here in Canada, but it felt like it was consistently hot more often than it should be. But the one thing we've been waiting for on the Z Fold series is a flagship camera, and we finally have one. A 200 megapixel lens, the same one you'd find on the S25 Edge and the S25 Ultra. The other two cameras are very similar to the Z Fold 6. You still get a 10 megapixel telephoto lens with 3x optical zoom and a 12 megapixel ultra-wide lens. The good news though is that the ultra-wide now has autofocus and can take proper macro shots. The Z Fold 6 had an okay camera, but it wasn't amazing or consistent. The Z Fold 7, I'm seeing much more consistent, sharper, and cleaner pictures with better dynamic range due to the larger pixels, allowing for better light capture and improved low light performance. Now during the day, pictures were fairly close between the two phones. There were moments where the Z Fold 6 had punchier, contrasty photos, but it was essentially just jacking up the contrast. The Z Fold 7 consistently offered more clarity in the majority of shots. At 30 times zoom, which is digital, the Z Fold 7 is slightly better than the Z Fold 6, but not by a huge margin. The ultra-wide camera looks identical during the day, but for macro photography, the Z Fold 7 lets you get closer and gives you better photos. For nighttime photography, they were pretty close, but it really came down to consistency. The Z Fold 7 provided clearer, cleaner, slightly more detailed shots and usually offered better exposure. The ultra-wide camera is still not my favorite on a smartphone. There are definitely better phones for ultra-wide shots, and while autofocus does improve for nighttime shots, it still could be better. And while you have access to that 3x telephoto, it's only 10 megapixels. So while it's better than digitally zooming in, it's not the best telephoto lens out there. But we finally get flagship level video capabilities, including the ability to shoot log video on the Z Fold 7, which you couldn't do on the Z Fold 6. This gives me, someone who likes to shoot video, much more control over the colors rather than relying solely on Samsung's processing. 4K 30 looks great on both phones, but again, the Z Fold 7 offers more clarity when shooting video, even though at times the Z Fold 6 looks more saturated or adds a bit more contrast. So here's the bottom line. The Galaxy Z Fold 7 is arguably the best foldable phone you can buy in North America right now. It's dramatically thinner, lighter, has a larger display, and feels like a proper phone when it's in your pocket. Is it perfect? Obviously not. I mean, the Chinese competition are using better batteries, some of their cameras are a little bit more flagship, so Samsung does have some catching up to do, but this is the right direction. I say, like, if you were holding out to buy a foldable, this one could be it. My only suggestion is that if battery life is truly important to you, maybe this is not for you, because like if you're gonna keep this for like 4 or 5 years, 4,400 milliamp hours is a little low. Like it's just gonna get degraded over 4 to 5 years and it's gonna feel even worse. But if you're a light user or medium user, you'll be fine. Just keep that in mind. Plus on top of that, try to take advantage of Samsung's trade-in deals if you're planning on buying it, or wait for a really good one in the future. That wraps up my video. If you have any questions, let me know in the comment section down below. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next one.